Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. In a critical move, we know that Israel recently launched its first acknowledged airstrikes on Iran and Iranian soil. And when we talk about this attack, this is an unprecedented move since October the 7th. Israel warns Israel of severe consequences if it retaliates. Iran, on the other hand, is saying that it has complete right to self-defense. As is this situation is unfolding, the region and the whole world is, of course, watching this chaos unfolding every day. Tonight, we're going to be talking about all these dimensions. What are its implications for Middle East and for the larger region and for globe as well? To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Mr. Sheharyar, who is analyst. Welcome to the program. We are also joined online by Dr. Jamil, who is former ambassador. Welcome to the program. And we join online by Mr. Fraz Naqvi, who is head of Iran program, Institute of Regional Studies, Islamabad. Welcome to the program. Mr. Fraz, let me start with you. Of course, when we talk about this recent intensification of the conflict, how do you see, because we know that both Iran and Israel have had a tense relationship since 1979, but this is first acknowledged airstrike by Israel. How do you see this situation and the way it has unfolded?
Well, thank you so much, Mariam, for inviting me to your show. Let me begin by saying that since 1979 and specifically after 2006, Iran and Israel have been in the shadow conflict, or what we could say in the proxy conflict with each other, starting from Iraq, then to Lebanon, then Palestine, Gaza Strip, and to some extent in Red Sea, Persian Gulf, and Yemen as well. But we have never observed, we have never analyzed that both of these states could basically attack each other directly. It was for the very first time in April this year then that Iran basically strike down the Israeli targets in Tel Aviv and other areas. And then again in October, on October 1st, we have seen an unprecedented large-scale strikes of Iran onto some of the military bases of Israel. So the Saturday attack of Israel was basically the reaction to what Iran had conducted on October 1st. But scale of those attacks that have been speculated previously, we have not seen such magnitude in those strikes by Israel. What we saw basically was some of the mid-range and low-intensity missiles and drones by Israel that it claimed to hit several Iranian military facilities or Iranian military bases. But we have not seen that those strikes have caused significant damage to Iran in strategic terms. Yes, it is quite true that four of the Iranian army soldiers and commanders have been killed as a result of those strikes. But at the strategic level, I think it was not that much of a worrisome situation for Iran. And what we have seen was basically the face-saving act on the behalf of Israel against the October 1st attack of Iran. So at the strategic level, at the geopolitical level, I think Israel came under immense pressure that it had to respond given the situation of its inability to strike down Iran after April attack and then again after October 1st attack, as well as its volatile situation at the Lebanese border, in which after 1 month of trying to invade the Lebanese border, Israel had basically have failed to a large extent, and it basically relied on the air strike while the ground invasion has been going downwards stream. So I think it was just a face-saving act on the behalf of Israel, but given the casualties on the Iranian side, as I have mentioned, four of the soldiers have been killed. It is quite likely that Iran might respond, and this time Iran would not only target, in my humble opinion, not only target the strategic or military facilities, but Iran might follow the suit of what Israel had been conducting, that is to target some of the officials of Israeli military or
Right.
defense personnel.
Right, and let me bring in Dr. Jamil into the discussion. Dr. Jamil, first, what's your take on these recent strikes, especially when we look at the shadow war that has been going on between the two nations for quite some time and for decades now, and also how significant is the timing of these strikes at the same time. Also, when we look at the targets that were chosen by Israelis, how do you look at it?
This problem was brewing up as we have discussed it earlier. Israel finds Iran as the country which could resist in the region. And Israel was able to neutralize its neighboring country, all the Arab countries who had put up some resistance in 67 or earlier. So they some by going into some agreement, improving its military might, Israel, and Israel wanted to remain to be strongest country around in this region. But somehow they were underestimating Iran as well. Recent happenings, the vicious circle of attack and counterattack and again attack, and now counterattack is expected from Israel, from Iran, because Iran has already announced, and its permanent representative in the United Nations has already announced that Iran reserves the right under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter to defend itself and to respond. So this, where it stops, one doesn't know, because things are escalating. It would all depend how Israel behaved in the coming days and coming weeks. But it's also connected with the American politics and the forthcoming election. We can come
Right. But Dr. Jamil,
on that point.
Right, Dr. Jamil,
Yeah,
I want your comment also on the fact that this is the first time that Israel has openly, of course, admitted to these strikes. Previously, Israel has also, we know that, of course, it has targeted Iranian embassy as well, and in the past it has targeted generals and scientists of Iran in the past as well. But this time it has admitted to the fact that it has attacked and it has, of course, attacked launched attacks on Iranian soil. How significant is this? And also, do you think this is signaling a shift in regional dynamics?
Well, it has two dimensions. One is that Israel did not have any legal ground to strike on the consulate of Iran, which is the mission of Iran, which means it is a kind of a sovereign area of Iran, which was in Damascus, and that was attacked. So Israel did not have any legal standing to attack that. Therefore, they did not admit it. And there were other attacks also. Israel thought that although Israel doesn't bother about the international laws, and Israel has not respected any of the Security Council's resolutions, scores of Security Council resolutions in terms of Palestine and even Lebanon 1701, but they respect that. Somehow, in this case, once it came to taking on Iran, they were trying to just take the advantage and take the strength from the international law, and therefore, in my opinion, they did not acknowledge officially. This time they have acknowledged officially because on the 1st of October, once Iran had launched barrages of missiles on the sovereign soil of the Israel, the Israelis government had made it very clear that they would retaliate, and they would retaliate under, again, using Article 51. So they were hiding behind Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. So on one side, they are trying to see the legitimacy of it. They are attacking each other. On the other side, as I said, Israel is not respecting once it comes to Palestine or Lebanon international law. So where do we go from here? It appears that
Right.
their diplomacy has worked.
Where do we go from there remains a significant question. And Sheharyar, when we look at this unfolding situation, if and when Iran retaliates, what do you think it means for the regional stability?
So, Maryam, previously the whole conflict between Israel and Iran was limited to cyber attacks. It was also like limited to targeted assassinations, and also we saw from time to time the proxy conflict like emanating in Syria and Lebanon or from the Yemenis, or it was like outside the boundaries of both Israel and Iran. This is the first time the covert warfare has now converted into overt military action. And this is a very bad precedent that is being set in the Middle East, which is already very volatile right now. Now what we basically see is that the stakes for de-escalation on both sides are very high. If one side decides not to escalate or not to respond, the whole element of sovereignty comes into question, and that is like being challenged by both regional powers at this time. So there is a huge potential of spillover of this conflict, and there are like a lot of other stakeholders in this conflict that will ultimately be affected, and the whole region could be engulfed in a wider conflict. If we even look at Syria and if we look at the GCC countries, the most of the statements that basically came from GCC stakeholders were of condemnation, and they did not support Israel's strikes on Iran. Other than that, if we see regional players, they have like a lot of stakes, especially if you look at Russia. They have like a lot of stakes in Syria as well, and historically they have like supported Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria as well. And Israel is relentlessly attacking Syria. It's like attacking currently Lebanon, and also like various separate locations in Iraq as well. So from if this
Right. And Sheharyar, when we talk about de-escalation, how significant is de-escalation talks, especially when we look at in the context of US has already reaffirmed its ironclad commitment to Israel's security and safety. So in all of that context, where does these de-escalation talks stand?
So Maryam, in this particular situation that we're discussing right now, I think a lot of like backdoor diplomacy has taken place, and I think that has like also like given some sort of positive impact as well. When Israel basically conducted these strikes, Netanyahu the next day also said that we have achieved all objectives that we had in striking Iran. And when it comes to the Iranian side as well, they also basically said that this was a very limited strike and there was like no major impact on any military facilities as well. So the rhetoric from both sides was pointing towards some sort of de-escalation. So this is a good omen for now, but how long will this like back channel diplomacy be taking place, and how long will it be viable? If this whole conflict, and now we have to like see whether Iran chooses to retaliate to this like latest unprovoked attack by Israel. If Iran does indeed choose to react, then I think that this whole region would be engulfed in a war that will impact all stakeholders in this region.
Right, and coming back to you, Fraz, when we look at this situation, if and when Iran choose to retaliate in coming days, what would the situation look like, especially when we talk about in the context of Iran's axis of resistance and also these non-state actors like Hezbollah, Hamas and Syrian allies? What role do you think they are going to be playing in all this in the region in coming days?
Well, Mariam, in my humble opinion, the response from the Iranian side would come because we have listened to the statements of the supreme leader as well as the president of Iran, and both of them have said that Iran would respond, but the nature of the response would depend upon the Iranian officials, and the decision would lie solely upon the Iranian military officials and the political leadership. So the response would come, in my humble opinion. It might be limited, it might be escalatory, but I think since the casualties had happened, so it is upon the dignity and the sovereignty of Iran that it might respond, given its stake as an ideological state as well as the flag bearer of the Persian Empire. So when the ideology comes into play, when the historic legacy would comes into play, when nationalism would put into question, then it puts a lot of pressure on the state to fulfill or satisfy the demands of of the masses. Regarding the second part of your questions, I think that given the crucial situation right now and given Israel's busyness in almost all the sectors, whether it be Gaza operation or the Lebanon operation or limited strikes on Red Sea as well as upon Syria, I think it would be very difficult for Israel to open another war front, and that again would be against Iran, which claimed itself to be the leader of the so-called axis of resistance. So I think, given the past experiences and given the right now volatile situation of Israel, I think that Israel won't like to respond to the Iranian strikes at the maximum level, because right now what Israel is basically aiming is to conclude its operation in Gaza and try to have the superior authority over the Lebanese affair. The objective which it has so far, which it failed so far in achieving. So I think if it tries to engage Iran into this conflict, I think it would further complicate the situation for Israel. On the other hand, when it comes to the Iranian policy has never been to engage Israel militarily. Rather, Iran basically wants to engage Israel in a long-term conflict across all the spectrums, given it the defense spectrum, political spectrum, financial spectrum, international legal spectrum, and all that. And when the situation would be ripe enough that Israel might be near from imploding itself, then the final blow would come from the Iranian side or Iranian proxy partners in the Middle East. So Iran is basically
Right.
eyeing to engage Israel in a long-term conflict.
Right, and Dr. Jamil, when we look at this situation, what impact, in your opinion, does this recent election cycle could have on Israel-Iran relations, and what do you think Washington is thinking at this point in time, especially when we look at that, of course, US government is saying that they stopped Israel from attacking the nuclear sites, but of course we know that Netanyahu is denying these things. What do you look at this situation? How do you look at this situation?
I, I think these statements of stopping Israel from further strike and further attacks, this is for the consumption of the election campaign. This is a part of election campaign and consumption of the U.S. Citizens. But basically, if you look at the actions of the U.S. government, there are about over 50,000 tons of the arms ammunition equipment had been supplied since 7th of October, and including depleted ammunition which carried depleted uranium, which is required for the precision guidance. So these are the very lethal weapons supplied, and while the three-phase peace plan was announced by Joe Biden at the same time, the C-130s were loaded with the arms and ammunition. So that by itself is a contradiction and a negation of their statement that they were asking Israel to stop. However, there are reports that there was some diplomatic work done because Israel, right from Obama's time, was very eager to strike the Iranian's nuclear facilities. And there are scores of reports available on the net to this count. And Israel, this time also was itching to strike the oil facilities or the nuclear facilities, but some diplomatic work was done in which reportedly Oman was there, Switzerland, and they are the one carrying messages between Iran and US. Qatar also played its role. So therefore, it
Right.
was
And
at
do
a
you think,
limited
Dr.
scale.
Jamil, right, and do you think, Dr. Jamil, that this could be considered as a restraint on part of restraint approach on part of Israel? When we look at that, initially the war cabinet of Netanyahu was planning on striking the nuclear and energy facilities of Iran, and then they decided to hit military facilities. Do you think that was a restraint?
We have to look at it from a bigger spectrum of the whole thing. Israel, once they found that Iraq has now started trying to process the enrichment, they neutralized Iraq. All right, and as I said, that even after '67 war, Israel was able to almost neutralize all the threats which it could reckon that could cause some difficulty to Israel. Now, Hamas, we have seen how Israel has taken on. Hezbollah, what Israel is trying, it has not succeeded. That's a different thing. But Netanyahu is on record saying that we will treat Lebanon in the same manner as we have treated Gaza, unless they alienate themselves or they delineate themselves from Hezbollah. So if we correlate these statements of Netanyahu himself, and if we go back into the recent history in which Israel not once but a couple of times had directly threatened Iran that if the nuclear facilities are not stopped, enrichment is not stopped, they would strike. They would not mind striking it. So if we bear all those things in mind in the overall aim and objective of Israel, they would always like to neutralize. The only threat now which is of some value, which is of some kind of a resistance which Israel can feel. So they would like to. Now, to what extent they are supported with the United States policy? Normally, United States supports Israel once it comes to any kind of a harm to Israel, and it's not once; it's so many times. The current administration of Joe Biden has spelled it out, including Joe Biden himself. Both candidates, presidential candidates, even this time, they are in competition to win over the Israeli lobby at home, as well as to please the Israeli war cabinet and people because of the network which Israeli lobby has. And there is a famous book of John Sheharyar about Israeli lobby, how it works in the United States. So long as the United States gives full support, and so far it has been giving full support,
Right.
probably Israel would keep trying to do that. But one more point, Iran has, as per the latest reports, Iran has tagged its retaliatory option if the ceasefire is attained in Gaza and Lebanon. Then Iran says that it might as well give up with this right of Article 51 of striking back on Israel. Coming few days will decide about it, but Israel doesn't seem to be having any containment or stopping what they have already decided about
Right.
Gaza and what they are doing in Lebanon.
Right, and Sheharyar,
Yes.
of course, Dr. Jamil has rightly pointed out that there is no containment that we are going to be witnessing in coming days, keeping in mind the history. And of course, what's your take on this, that we are witnessing a polarization when it comes to Israeli public, and especially the right wing within Israel is still saying that Israel's response was not strong enough when it comes to Iran. What's your take on that, and how this is going to be unfolding in future? Because there is a lot of polarization when we look at the families of the captives and the Israeli public.
So, Mariam, when it comes to the families of the hostages that are there, obviously they want a end to this conflict and they want the safe return of the hostages. But if you look at the majority of the Israeli society, it is like so shifted towards the right wing that they are egging on Netanyahu and his war cabinet, and they're giving him a lot of support. And even if you look at the high, religious elite of Israel, they're also like supporting, and they have like backing the Netanyahu government and his war cabinet in like keeping the conflict going, and they don't want the Netanyahu regime to like stop. When it comes to all the popularity polls that have been conducted, Netanyahu's popularity has increased, and he is basically seeing this as a win in his constituency, which is the right-wing voters of Israel. When we look at the American elections and this retaliation or like attack on Iran, it was very well predicted, because the American elections are due to or set to happen on the 5th of November, and it was well predicted that if there is an Israeli response, which we were expecting, that response would come before the 5th of November. And this response, I personally think, was very measured, and it did not like go beyond like attacking any sensitive installations like nuclear installations or like oil facilities. And this, I would basically think that the backdoor channel diplomacy worked, and the impact wasn't as much as it was expected. But given that, I don't think Netanyahu or his war cabinet has any incentives right now till the elections take place on the 5th of November, and till the new presidency or like the new candidate takes over the presidency of the US, which would be in January. So I think this conflict will be escalated, it will be prolonged, and we'll have to wait and see how the next administration, may it be the Trump administration or the Harris administration, we'll have to wait and see what their policy would be when they basically take office. Before that, I don't see this conflict ending. I don't see Netanyahu or his war cabinet relenting or like stepping back. I think this conflict will be increasing by the day.
Right. And Faraz, what's your take on this, that how this is going to be impacting this Israel's acknowledged airstrikes on Iranian soil, how this is going to be impacting the ongoing conflict in Lebanon?
Well, Mariam, if you see that right now there has been the war of optics that is being waged upon each other, both by Israel and Iran. When we watched the Iranian strikes on Israel, we could clearly see that the Iranian missiles have directly hit the various facilities of Israel. But right now, when we see the Israeli attack, we haven't come across any sort of such footage or video or picture that could validate that Israeli strikes have actually hit the military facilities. Yes, there are some of the satellites images, but again, the optics matter, and that is what have been perceived generally throughout the region as well as the globe, that Israeli response was measured and limited. Now, there could be two situations. The first situation could be that the back channel diplomacy has worked, as Sheharyar has mentioned. The other perspective is that Iranian deterrence have been triumphed, because Iran has been saying again and again that Iran has the nuclear option on its table as well, and there have been a growing tide within the Iranian political spectrum that their nuclear doctrine should be transformed and should be changed for the betterment of the Iranian state and the society. And as well as regarding your question about Lebanon, we have also seen that these strikes, and that Israel publicly acknowledging that it has targeted or hit the Iranian facilities, it is basically the result of the pressure that have been put upon the Israel and Netanyahu, for that matter, because it has been failed in Lebanon so far. So what I see or I foresee basically is that the ground offensive of Israel against Lebanon could be limited, but the air strikes of Israel would definitely going to be escalated, and Israel might take on not only the military target or Hezbollah target for that matter, but also the civilians target, as we have witnessed in the case of Gaza.
Right, and Faraz, referring to your point that you mentioned earlier about the nuclear targets that Israel did not hit at this point in time, do you think the breakdown of Iranian nuclear deal in 2015 has something to do with this, or with the escalation of tensions between Iran and Israel at this point in time?
Well, learning from the history, we have seen that Israel has always tried to maintain its qualitative military edge against its Middle Eastern neighbor, and that is why we saw that Israel has targeted the Iraqi nuclear facilities back in early 1980s. So, because Israel wants to be the sole nuclear power in the Middle East, but right now the reports suggest, and we also know that Iran is quite close to becoming the nuclear power. In fact, it is the matter of weeks that Iran might develop a nuclear weapon, as per the various reports of IAEA and other nuclear bodies. We have seen that most of the Iranian facilities, nuclear facilities, they are below ground and they are well protected. So even if Israel might target the above surface facilities, it might not impact the Iranian nuclear technology, because it would again be the matter of days that Iran might reassemble its nuclear facilities and enrich its uranium and plutonium to develop a nuclear weapon. So even if Israel would have hit the nuclear sites of Iran, it would result in a futile act, and it would only escalate the situation to the very extent that Iran might declare itself a nuclear state, which Israel never wanted. So I think this is the intentional prevention on the behalf of Israel, not to target the nuclear facilities and just to target the military facilities for the face saving.
Right, right. And Dr. Jamil, when we look at this escalation in the recent days, how do you think this has impacted the ongoing war on Gaza and the prospects of peace processes in Gaza?
Well, Gaza war is intensified, as a matter of fact. Even last 24 hours, they've been able to, rather, last about 2, 3 days, the Israelis have killed more than 1,000 people in Gaza, and they have now reached a score of 43,020 as of today. So that is going unabated. The only thing which deters them is still a resistance. And despite all these military might, and despite all these bombs and explosive used against Gaza, they have not been able to achieve their aim of even getting their hostages released. And it's about 134 square kilometers of area, but still Israel, with such a huge army, has not been able to hold the ground and could reach to those tunnels where the hostages are kept. And likewise, as it was being discussed, in Lebanon, Israel tried. Their brigadier got killed, their colonel got killed, there are scores of Israeli soldiers got killed once they tried to do the incursion and invasion in the southern Lebanon, because Netanyahu had been publicly announcing that they will make sure that the southern Lebanon is neutralized and they are able to have a full control, in a way that southern Lebanon is not really able to fire rockets. On contrary, 150 rockets almost every day is being fired by Hezbollah into the territory of Israel. And you saw some of those footage, and we heard the news of Netanyahu's house itself was hit. So the precision is now being attained by the Hezbollah. So Israel definitely would be thinking to intensify it, because Israel military might and the edge of the technology, Israel definitely has that. And Israel has a much higher budget, about $25 billion budget, as compared to Iranian budget, $9.9 billion of budget. But still, the resistance is so high because the motivated fighters of Hezbollah and Hamas, they have not been able to let Israel come and hold the grounds. So if we have all these factors in our mind, it appears that Israel would like to intensify it. And so long as Israel keeps doing that, Iran is not going to sit quiet because the proxies, they are the two major proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas. And if they allow the other proxies in the region, such as Iran, Iraq, Malaysia, Syria, and there are other proxies which have yet not been activated in some of the Gulf countries where the Iranian supporters and followers, we have a huge number like Kuwait, like Bahrain. So if that is also activated, Iran would have an edge. Coming back to that point about the nuclear assets, John Bolton is on record, who was the advisor to Trump and who was also a permanent representative of United States and United Nations. According to him, if Israel does not take on the nuclear sites, or if they don't attack the nuclear sites, then this statement is about 3 weeks ago. He had given this statement, and if Israel does not take on that, then Iran would be able to fire, make a nuclear warhead and can fire Israel. So he was recommending that Israel should take on the nuclear sites. So coming days, I think, getting more complicated, and in the coming days, probably we can see some kind of a escalation. The only thing which is deterring them, Israel, is they have now got to know about Iran's capability, how they can neutralize their missiles, which were fired just 3 days ago, 2 days ago, and so many missiles were neutralized by S-400, which was supplied by the Russians. So
Right.
the Iran and Israel have also tested each other's capability, and therefore now they will recalibrate their future attacks on each other. Yes.
Of course, and of course, this poses a threat to not only to the region but to the globe at large as well. But what are its implications when we look at the coming days, Sheharyar? What are implications of Israel and Iran's escalation in ties, especially when we look at it from the angle of global energy supplies, because Iran remains a significant supplier of course, global energy chains. How this is going to be impacting those?
So Maryam, it's not just Iran. Iran is has very close proximity to the Gulf states as well, which
GCC
are
countries,
GCC
yeah.
countries, which are major player when it comes to the global oil markets. So this conflict has very significant escalation risks, and if this conflict escalates between Israel and Iran, we could witness a severe surge in the global oil market as well. Obviously, the energy supplies or the energy costs of energy in the EU or in the Western capitals have already increased since the Russia-Ukraine war as well. And given if there is a conflict that happens or escalates between Israel and Iran, we can see a similar trend in this region as well. Depending on how the Pakistan's economy is operating, we have a huge import bill when it comes to the oil that we import from the Gulf countries, and if the prices of that will increase, then it will have a significant impact on the inflationary impact on Pakistan's economy as well. When it comes to the Gulf countries, they're making significant efforts to attract foreign investment and to wean away from their dependence on petrodollars as well, and that impact will also come in Gulf countries as well, especially Qatar, Saudi, UAE, and other GCC players as well. Again, when it comes to other players like Russia, historically they have been supporting Syria, they have been supporting Iran, as Ambassador Saab has also mentioned that they recently increased in Iran's deterrence capability by supplying them with the state-of-the-art air defense technology like the S-300 and S-400 defense systems as well. So any escalation of this sort, if it comes to play in the Middle East, we would see a devastating impact when it comes to the conflict, and also the global economic situation, which never really did recover after COVID, and I think that would take a major hit, especially in the global south.
Right, and lastly, last word, Dr. Jamil, when we look at this situation and international community's response to this, of course, we know that Iran has called for United Nations Security Council special session, emergency session on this situation. What do you think? What are your hopes on that, and what is needed from diplomatic point of view at this point in time? Dr. Jamil, am I audible to you? Let me take the same question to Mr. Fraz. Fraz, what's your take on this? Of course, we know that Iran has taken this recent Israel's strike on Iran to United Nations Security Council session and has called for an emergency session on this unfolding situation. What diplomatic options are available?
Well, Mariam, it is basically more of a show than entailing a substantial case for this matter. What Iran is basically trying to do is to get the condemnation from across the globe as well as the region in which it has so far become victorious in gaining the condemnation against Israel. So, what is Iran is basically is trying is to have a multi-pronged strategy in which on the one side, it has been supplying weapons and sponsoring its proxy partners against Israel to keep the military pressure on that state. On the other hand, it has been consolidating its allies with Russia, China, and other countries, as evident from SCO meetings, sideline meetings at SCO as well. And on the last end, what Iran is basically is trying to do is to have the international institutions, for example, the UN, the UN Security Councils, and other institutions, so that they could be able to condemn Israel and put a moral pressure. And that pressure has been successful to a lesser extent, in which we have seen that Italy has cut off all the military aid to Israel, as well as there have been the condemnation on the part of humanitarian angle by Canada and other European states. So what Iran is basically is trying to do is to expose Israel and to weaken it both militarily as well as internationally.
Right. I thank all three of my panelists for joining me in today's program. Of course, when we look at this unfolding situation, it is the region is getting unstable with each and every passing day, and international community needs to do more when it comes to calls for de-escalation. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.